Welcome back to the channel. This is Trinity Storm and you are watching second and final part of What If Fem-Naruto was saved by Kakashi's father. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
Kakashi was elevated to Chunin a month after Naruto turned 6. A whole year passed under the blonde's nose, and her kenjutsu skills continued to improve. When Tsukumo was on duty and her academy classes were over, Naruto discovered that she was training more frequently with Kakashi and Minato. With Tsukumo or Minato teaching them a little something here and there, even her loser squad was getting stronger. Even her terrible speech impairment was overcome, and if the blonde mispronounced something, it was usually because she was too lazy to speak correctly. On a sunny Saturday, which was Kakashi's day off, Minato stopped by the Hitaki compound when Naruto and her friends, including Kashi, were 7 years old. As it happened, Tsukumo was also off, and he was making lunch for his little henchmen in the kitchen. Although Obito, Guy, and Anko had committed to coming by the following day to demolish Tsukumo's house, they were busy for the day. The blonde teen who was excitedly crossing the koi garden to them was greeted by the tiniest Hitaki and his blonde sparring partner, who had stopped beating the living daylights out of each other. When Naruto saw how agitated her teenage father was, her eyebrows shot up in silent inquiry. Kakashi called, "Ma, hey sensei." Minato, her cheeks flushed, skidded to a stop in front of the kids. "You guys won't believe what happened today," he said with a sun-like grin. With her hands on her hips, Naruto laughed. "What happened, you dork? Spit it out already and tell us." Alright, you know that girl I told you about?" replied Minato. Kakashi's eyes wrinkled in a certain way, indicating to the two blondes that he was grinning under that mask. The Hitaki slyly inquired, "You mean Kushina-san? The girl you've been pining after since your academy days?" Naruto's face drained of all its blood. Ignoring Minato as he turned beet red and started to splutter, she expanded her senses. With a knot in his stomach from fear, Naruto thought, "I know that chakra. How could I not have seen it up close?" Kurama let out a sigh. "Until you were old enough to handle an influx of my chakra, I knew you wouldn't be able to avoid her." Yes, well, she finally agreed to go out with me." Kakashi interrupted, after years of being shot down. "Oh hush you brat. Anyways, I want everyone to meet her so." In a helpful way, Kakashi said, "You brought her over." Naruto panicked when Minato smiled. With horror, the blonde thought, "That's your leftover chakra. She is currently in the kitchen." Kurama Kami. "There's mom in the kitchen. How am I going to proceed?" "First of all, you could relax," the Biju said bluntly. "Are you crazy? You're telling me to calm down when I could siphon off the remainder of your chakra and kill her?" "Yes, I'm telling you to relax," Kurama growled. "Would you like to let everyone know that you have something to conceal? When the time comes, Kushina won't realize that my chakra is leaving her, but if she gets any closer, she will get sick, so make up an excuse and go." She was feeling a little lightheaded, so she didn't even need to make anything up. Sweat started to trickle down her brow as her chakra trembled in its coils, filling to overflowing. She could feel herself starting to burn as her eyes changed from blue to violet. "Hey, are you alright?" While yelling at her partner, the blonde erred by failing to pay attention to her surroundings. "You idiot, Naruto, leave now." With concern, Naruto glanced up at the person touching her shoulder blearily. Under furrowed red brows, she was examined by pretty violet eyes. "Hey, what's wrong, Tita Bane?" Naruto gave a violent flinch. "How on earth did mom arrive? Now, get out now," the fox roared. "Naruto?" Minato and Kakashi were observing her and attempting to assist her in some way. When Naruto sensed that her eyes were about to flush, she squeezed them shut. She slapped Kushina's hand away without intending to. The redhead flinched as she growled, Don't touch me." Then Minato scowled, "Naruto, calm down alright. Don't take it out on Kushina, just tell us what's wrong, okay?" Naruto felt as though she was boiling from the inside out as she turned away from them and panted. Kushina had a sudden fever that flushed her face, and nobody seemed to notice how pale she was growing every second. It would not be long before the redhead started to feel sick too. Naruto snarled, "Nobody touch me." Kakashi took a step forward, his dark eyes solemn. "Naru." They were momentarily blinded by the golden glow that erupted from her body, and then she was gone before anyone could blink. When Naruto lost control of the incredible speed she had been able to achieve with her Kyuubi cloak, she stumbled and fell violently forward after her foot slipped on a loose tile on the rooftop she had been zipping across. Naruto tucked herself in a protective ball and grunted in pain as her tiny form fell off the side of the rooftop and into the alleyway below. To her complete surprise, the blonde fell straight into someone's arms after flipping herself around to make a last-minute rough landing. Then Naruto yelled, "Sorry," a familiar, easygoing voice drawled, "You're nothing but trouble, aren't you, Naruto?" and then sighed carelessly. The blonde recognized her classmate and the person she had met during the Chunin exams years prior as she looked up at her savior. "Ibiki!" exclaimed the blonde. With another sigh, the tall boy helped the short blonde stand up. Naruto glanced up at the boy, his masked face flushed. Ibiki was still among the tallest people she knew at the age of 7. At least in contrast to her peers, anyway. His white hair was cropped into short spikes, and his skin was slightly tanned. He had half-lidded, deep brown eyes that were never interested. Although he spent a lot of time with Asuma, Aoba, Raida, and Genma, she didn't know him well. He was a very relaxed, almost awkward, child who didn't talk unless someone spoke to him. "Thanks for catching me, man. Could have been an ugly spill, you know?" Ibiki gave a shrug. He gave a grunt, "Welcome." Naruto smiled at him and looked around, observing that they were in a dimly lit alley with crates covered in dusty cobweb and puddles formed by concoctions of disgusting liquids. Cockroaches scuttled from corner to corner, and infirm rats darted from shadow to shadow. Naruto's eyebrows shot up in inquiry. The blonde questioned, "What are you doing back here all alone, Ibiki?" Rather than respond, Ibiki simply moved past a splintering crate and continued walking down the alley. Silently, Naruto squatted down in front of an open box and followed the white-haired boy's lead, peering over his shoulder. The sight of a fluffy pink blanket snuggled around a litter of 8 kittens caused blue eyes to widen. The adorable little creatures with white spots were sound asleep. "Ah," she squealed inwardly, her eyes glistening. As Naruto's companionship changed, she became more aware of him and, for the first time, his backpack. Ibiki just zipped the bag open, slid it off his shoulders, and placed it by his side. The blonde realized that he had taken something from the bag. A can, and opened it. "Cat food?" murmured Naruto. Ibiki affirmed, reaching into his bag once more and taking out a sizable porcelain bowl. After shaking the cat food into the bowl, the white-haired boy placed it in front of the box where the kittens slept. One of the drink holders on the side of his pack was where he put the empty can. Naruto squatted comfortably at the boy's side, watching the cats sleep, after shifting from her looming position over his shoulder to his right. After a while, the blonde became restless in the quiet and refused to consider the reasons behind her current predicament. She muttered, "Where's their mom?" Ibiki gave a curt grunt, "Dead. Had a broken leg. Don't know what from. But I spotted some older civilian kids torturing her. Shaved her of fur, spun her around by the tail, threw her in a bucket of old rainwater, and watched her drown." In silent horror, Naruto's eyes grew wide and she covered her mouth with her hands. She exhaled, "Gosh, that's awful." Naruto looked at the boy studying next to her and said, "And you just watched them do it?" Ibiki shrugged and looked intently at the kittens that were sleeping in the box across from them. He whispered, "I was trying to understand." She approached, as though being close to him would make it easier for her to understand what he was saying, and Naruto's brows furrowed. Ibiki kept staring blindly at the sleeping kittens in front of him before Naruto finally asked, "What were you trying to understand?" He rasped, "Why?" That single-syllable word was so straightforward and so powerful that Naruto was shocked. Ibiki said to her in a low voice, "I didn't get it. I don't get it." With a silent comforting nuzzle of her shoulder, Naruto urged the boy, "Tell me." The blonde was aware that it was just a cat. She couldn't get rid of the feeling that Ibiki needed to tell someone, even though it was sad and completely incorrect. The cats and their mother weren't the only ones involved. That much was visible to Naruto. However, it was the meaning conveyed by the cats and their mother. What they displayed about the world and its inhabitants. Naruto had gained a wealth of knowledge about the world. No one ever really knew how much she had learned because she never felt like she could tell. That she ought to disclose. How much Naruto would have sacrificed in her early days just to have someone pay attention. To let someone know that a bowl of ramen and a ruffle of her hair wouldn't be enough to cover up the shadows she concealed behind her smile. Ibiki's eyes were shadowed. Ibiki needed a sympathetic ear. Naruto would pay attention. Quietly, the blonde repeated, "Tell me, kind." Naruto was sliced by Ibiki's eyes as they slid away from the kittens. They removed her face, exposed the bone beneath her flesh and skin, and simply gazed. They observed. Naruto understood why so many people in the future had refrained from lying to Ibiki. She could also see that he was aware of her desire to hear, that she would pay attention and refrain from judging his thoughts, what he saw. Naruto felt her face stitched back together, felt the bones beneath flesh and skin where they should be, hidden from infection, while Ibiki's eyes disappeared once more, focused on the cats. Ibiki whispered the words, "I don't understand. It wasn't a mission. They were civilians. It was just a stupid cat. But they killed it, they tortured it, and they laughed. The people are the village, and if this is the kind of people, the village we protect is ninja. If this is a ninja's only purpose, to protect this, then what is a ninja?" Naruto hesitated. She sat down completely on her butt, blinked, and inhaled. The blonde looked up absently, studying the blue blanket in the afternoon that was adorned with fluffy white clouds, and sighed, "Ah, yeah, that's a good question." She reiterated, "That's a really good question." Ibiki gave a snort. Naruto looked up at the sky and blinked. "So, you watched because you were trying to think of a reason why normal people do such a horrible thing, because they're not ninja?" replied Naruto. "You were trying to figure out, as a ninja, what kind of person were you for protecting people like that? If your purpose is to die for cruel people, then how much worth do you have?" Well, sighed Naruto, turning back to her solemn companion and looking down. "I'm sure you know that all people can do cruel things, but not all people are cruel." Ibiki remained silent. Naruto was also aware, he was aware. "I can't say if any person has a worth, ninja or not. No matter how crappy of a human being they may be, they're still a person." Naruto replied, "It sucks to think that there are really messed up people in the world that do messed up things, but as a ninja, I think that I want to protect the people that are good. I want people to live with equal amounts of peace, you know? You can't understand the cruelty of others simply by looking, and even if you could, you probably won't like what you find. You still won't get it even if you do get it, you know? You won't because you don't think the same as the person who is being cruel. You'll want to change them, how they think and look at the things around them, so they don't do those messed up things. But sometimes, you're not gonna be able to change people. Sometimes they're not gonna get you, you know? 'Cause they'll already be set in their ways, they'll already be sure of their beliefs. But that's why you gotta hold strong, and act on your beliefs as a ninja. A ninja protects. You may not always get the people you protect, or even people at all, but it's whatever. You're not alone." Now Ibiki was staring at her. With eyes that arched into joyful crescents, Naruto grinned. "I'm a ninja too. Sometimes I don't get it either." Ibiki's gaze expanded. None of that really made sense," he replied. Naruto gave a snort. "I know, but you get it?" Ibiki's mouth slightly lifted on the side. "I get it." The two were surprisingly silent for the remainder of the afternoon. After 10 minutes or so of the children wrapping up their conversation, the cats had started to wake up, and they alternated in feeding the 8 kittens equally. Naruto had spent a lot of time disciplining especially avaricious kittens so that their siblings could actually get some of the milk, since Ibiki had also brought some milk and another bowl in his bag. Naruto knew her friends back home in Tsukumo, the full-fledged mother, would be worried as the sun started to set. Naruto said softly, "Well," as he squeezed the kitten's paws, which were resting face up on her lap. "It's getting late, Ibiki, so I should be heading home." The boy nodded, removing the cat from his head that was nestled in his short spikes and putting her back in the box that she and her siblings shared. Following Ibiki's example and smiling behind her mask, Naruto gently rubbed noses with the kitten in her hands as she said goodbye. The blonde discovered a kitten slouching at the bottom of the boy's backpack and assisted in laying down the other kittens that were climbing all over Ibiki's lap. Ibiki put the splintering crate that protected the kittens from the weather back in front of the cardboard box that served as their home, covered them with the fluffy pink cover again, and got up. Ibiki said, "I'll walk you." Nah, that's okay buddy. I'm sure Sake-chan would have a heart attack if I started bringing boys home." Naruto laughed. "Plus, you live near the academy, right? That's on the other side of the village. It'll be way dark by the time you get home." Ibiki shrugged and slung his backpack over his shoulders, zipping it up. "Okay. See you I guess." As the boy shoved his hands into his pockets and stumbled away, Naruto cheerily waved goodbye. After him, she called, "Bye-bye Ibiki. You're a pretty cool guy aren't ya? I hope we can hang out again soon." Ibiki didn't look back or answer, but she could tell the boy had snorted quietly in amusement because of the slight hunch in his shoulders. Naruto smiled. She has definitely made a new friend. Naruto's smile vanished as Ibiki's form was fully engulfed by distance, her senses focusing on the chakra signature that had been suppressed with such skill that she was unable to determine its nature or whether its owner was male or female. With her hands coolly sliding into the pockets of her orange track jacket, she called, "Are you going to come out and tell me what you want, or are you going to keep hiding and watching me like some perv? Now what's a kid like you doing with chakra sensing abilities so good that you can find me?" That voice caused Naruto's breath to catch. She couldn't get a break, could she? Good Kami. Her mother first, and now him? How come he had to be the one? Naruto turned to face the tall man after swallowing the lump that had suddenly become lodged in her throat. Her eyes were still stinging as she looked up. Naruto's heart ached as he thought, oh god, he's so young he doesn't even fully have the wart yet. Hey kid, you alright? Jiraiya said, his spiky bangs causing his white brows to furrow. You look like you've seen a ghost. The blonde thought gloomily, that's so close to the mark it's not even funny. As she blinked away the tears in her eyes and craned her neck almost painfully to examine the familiar yet strange tan face, Naruto rasped, yeah. With her eyes closed to conceal the pain that was shining in them, the blonde plastered a silly smile on her face. Oh yeah, I'm good. You just remind me of an old man I once knew. The red lines on Jiraiya's face vanished as he flushed in outrage and sputtered, old man. Naruto relaxed a little as she let Ero Sennin's silly demeanor calm her hurting heart. Yeah, you look just like him Gigi.san. The Toad Sennin said, Gigi, kid, do you know who I am? After the pain was concealed, Naruto opened her eyes and batted her blonde lashes in a false sense of innocence, asking, some old guy? Jiraiya suffocated. He sighed, all right, kid, that's it, I'm not old. I'm in my prime. In fact, I'm such a stag I could bag any woman I want. Oh, Casanova? Naruto thought indifferently. If that's the case, why in the world does Tsunade.ba-chan always punch you through the wall? Instead, Naruto asked, blinking naively, a stag? Just who are you? Jiraiya laughed and put his hands on his hips, asking, who am I? I'm only the greatest connoisseur of women to ever grace Fire Country. As Jiraiya started bouncing around in his peculiar kabuki dance and shouting about the east and the west, Naruto experienced a strong wave of nostalgia. Standing atop a garish toad he had conjured in a puff of smoke, he concluded grandly, I am the great and gallant Jiraiya of the Sannin. The sight made Naruto's blue eyes sparkle. It had been ages since she had seen a toad summon. Since her name wasn't on the contract at this point, she couldn't summon them because she was back in time and couldn't use the sage mode she had learned on Mount Myoboku. The 7-year-old yelled, "Yuwa," and hurried forward to cuddle up to the vibrant toad. You are so awesome. So squishy and orange and just awesome. Jiraiya choked, What the, out, don't ignore me. Under Naruto's admiration and attention, the toad the Sannin was standing on preened. The amphibian complained, rolling up to give Jiraiya a brief glare with yellow, slitted eyes. At least someone appreciates me, unlike some people. What? Naruto exclaimed, Squishy.san, you're the best. Naruto's unruly blonde head was gently patted by the toad. And what's your name, little lady? I'm Naruto. Pleased to meet ya. I said don't ignore me. Oops. Sorry Squishy.san, pervy old guy. I've gotta get home, or Sake-chan will notice I'm still gone and go into anaphylactic shock. Jiraiya shouted, I told you I'm not old. Naruto gave him a jovial salute and a dazzling smile behind her mask, declaring, it's Ero Sennin then. See ya Ero Sennin. As Naruto fled in a haze of untamed gold, the Toad Sage's eyes widened at the humiliating moniker, bulging out of their sockets. Naturally, Naruto had sensed him when she stumbled on the roof earlier, but he was so skilled at squelching his chakra signature that she was unaware it was him. The blonde had just stayed to take care of Ibiki and see what the person wanted. She was shocked that they hadn't shown up during her whole time with the young Morino. After some time, she had concluded that the person wanted to see one of them alone. After sending Ibiki on his way, she discovered that the unidentified signature did not pursue the boy. She called them out because she could tell they wanted to see her. Now that Naruto considered it, Ero Sennin had likely become interested in her and studied her because he could sense that she could use nature chakra, even though she was no longer a Toad Sage. It was fortunate that Naruto could beat a hasty retreat because she was so skilled at playing the fool. Naruto ducked behind a meat market and flower shop into another less run down alleyway once she was certain she was far enough from her former mentor. In an attempt to regain her bearings, Naruto leaned her back heavily against the side of the flower shop, pulled her mask down, brought her left hand up to her trembling lips, and bit painfully into her shaking fist. The trembling girl bit harder as she struggled with her wild chakra, trying to force the flow back into her coils, and cursed around the fist in her mouth as her chakra flared uncontrollably in distress. Her knuckles ached sharply, and she winced as she tasted the coppery tang of blood. She recoiled as she recalled the sunset, painted sky, standing beneath a tree by the side of the road, and a tall man offering her the other half of his blue popsicle while grinning subtly. Naruto whimpered as her eyes pinched shut and her heart strained. Haha. Thanks, you're the best Ero Sennin. You brat, I told you never to call me that. A crushing flow of despair exploded from her chakra. Naruto. A familiar voice jolted the blonde out of her memories, and she pounded her chakra with all her strength, causing it to return to its suppressed state. Her blue eyes snapped open as she followed the silver, capped figure of her fellow masked nin, and she choked, Kashi? With a clack that was almost identical, he fell from the roof of the meat market opposite her. Kakashi crossed his arms impatiently and walked toward the blonde girl. Dark eyes scrutinizing the girl's sagging figure, Kakashi remarked, "Where have you been, shorty? Everyone's been looking for you all over the place." After a moment, his silver brows furrowed in concern as he asked, "What's wrong?" Naruto lied and lowered her fist slowly, but the boy's sharp eyes were drawn to the red gleam on her knuckles. It's nothing, Kashi. You got hurt?" Kakashi inquired as he gently grasped her hand, turned it over, and examined the bloody ridges her teeth had left in her flesh. "Wait, these are..." Naruto yanked her hand away from the boy with the silver hair and said, "Let go already," before shoving it into her jacket pocket. "Nothing's wrong. Let's just go home already." When the blonde tried to push past the boy, he grabbed her shoulder and spun her around without any effort. When Naruto saw Kakashi's masked face sporting a no-nonsense frown, her jaw set stubbornly. Kakashi said, "No, we're not doing this. You're being irrational, and I want you to tell me why." With her hands raised in frustration, Naruto exclaimed, "Oh, so I'm being irrational? You're the one who's being irrational. You're seriously crying over a bite when I regrew my entire freaking arm? Why don't you just leave me alone? Huh? Can't you see I don't want to talk to you, or anyone about anything?" By the end of her explosion, the blonde was huffing, both hands painfully clenched at her sides. Kakashi simply gazed at her. He didn't appear upset, irate, or anything. She couldn't express how much his expression annoyed her. The Hokage said, "I'm not crying over anything, Naruto. You're the one who's crying." "What?" Naruto snapped, giving a menacing glare. "I'm not crying." That was the most emotional concession the blonde had made in a long time. Meeting Jiraiya was a prime example of how she occasionally came close, but it had been months since she had cried over her emotions. Kakashi stated firmly, "You are. How do you think I found you? You don't have to shed tears to be crying, Naruto. Your chakra told me all I need to know." Naruto asked smolderingly, "Yeah? Then maybe you can read my chakra telling you to foo." Kakashi entered her personal space with a roll of his eyes, and when he pulled her into an embrace, her curses were interrupted with an undignified squeak. Kakashi repeated, his voice muffled, "You're being irrational." He then pressed his masked mouth into the right side of her unruly blonde head, his lips grazing the glittering frog clip that held back a portion of her bangs. "What's wrong, Naruto?" The blonde felt the strength leave her instantly. With her shoulders slumping, Naruto let out a trembling sigh as she felt the warmth of Kakashi's hug and gave it back hesitantly. Naruto muttered feebly, "I can't tell you everything, but I was such a jerk. Kushina-san must hate me." When Kakashi's form trembled with laughter, the blonde snapped. "That's it," snorted the Hokage. Pulling away, Naruto snarled, "Kakashi, you jerk," and struck the boy on the side of the head. "Here I am pouring my heart out to you and you laugh?" Using caution, Kakashi rubbed his battered head and said, Naruto, please calm down for once and let me finish." With her mask lowered, Naruto's bottom lip protruded in a noticeable pout as she drew away from him and crossed her arms. Coolly crossing his arms once more, Kakashi explained, "I laughed because the idea of Kushina hating you is absolutely preposterous. You should have seen her after you ran off, running around like a chicken with its head cut off, going, 'What did I do? What did I say? Oh god, she was so cute, but she hates me, doesn't she, Minato?'" Naruto's blue eyes gleamed with hope as she stepped into Kakashi's personal space and demanded to know with her gaze alone. "Wha? Really?" she asked. The Hokage gazed at the pure blue of Naruto's eyes for a long time. He caught a glimpse of silver flecks strewn all over her irises. Pretty. And then he realized what he was doing again. Move. Kakashi spluttered, his face blushing slightly as he pushed the girl out of his personal bubble by slapping a hand over her face. Naruto staggered back, yelping. She pouted angrily at Kakashi while rubbing her battered nose. Anyways, the small Chunin emphasized, shoving his hands into his pockets. Yes, really. She was worried about you. Everyone was. With her shoulders slumped in shame, Naruto drew back behind her bangs. Why did you run off like that anyways? Naruto stammered, attempting to come up with a plausible lie. You have a reputation for being able to sense chakras, Kurama said, emerging from the slumber he had been in since Naruto fled, his sealed form adapting to the surge of chakra they had both been given. Oh, yes. Although I would hate to exploit mom's past as a Jinchuriki, I suppose there is no other choice. Kakashi's single silver brow went up. Naruto ducked her head in embarrassment and scuffed her sandal on the floor, acting as though she was embarrassed. Naruto explained, feeling rotten when Kakashi's dark eyes filled with acceptance and understanding. I sensed something weird when Kushina-san showed up. I panicked cause it reminded me of something a long time ago. I had to get away, so I snapped at you guys. Sorry about being such a jerk, by the way. Kakashi sighed and shook his head at the blonde before starting to leave. Honestly, he said. I suppose that's understandable. But you didn't need to disappear for several hours. Sorry, that blonde repeated. Kakashi gave a shrug. Come on shorty, let's go home. Pulling up her mask, Naruto fumbled over herself and hurried after the silver-haired boy who was calmly strolling down the street, taking his drab reply for what it was. Forgiveness. Naruto and Kakashi got into a fight on the way home. So, the blonde drew lead, catching the masked boy's curious glance out of the corner of his eye. She grinned. You were worried about me too, weren't you, Kashi? The boy with silver hair rolled his eyes. He said, not exactly, with his gray eyes crinkling in that familiar, irate way. Because you're so irresponsible and didn't ask Dad to wash all of your masks, you're using one of mine. Unfortunately, you're a hopeless klutz, and I didn't want anything to happen to it. Naruto snorted and swung wildly at the smirking boy's head, which he smoothly ducked under and hopped away from. Kakashi, you utter jerk, Naruto said. With a sly smile spreading across his face, Naruto exclaimed, oh, it's so on. When Kakashi called forth 2 chakra arms, her eyes widened, and she prudently flew to the rooftops. Naruto screamed, get back here, Hitaki, and used the moment to make a Kage Bunshin to replace him. The original Hitaki made his way to the Hokage tower while the clone pursued the youngest. Gigi had to do something for her. A few minutes later, a golden blur appeared in the window of the Hokage's office, uncurled, and landed in a tidy crouch across the desk of said Sarutobi. With his signature pipe between his lips, Hiruzen uttered, Ah Naruto, my dear girl. Come, sit. Help me with my paperwork. Ew, no way. The blonde cried, forming an X with her arms. The blonde lowered her arms and leapt down from the Hokage's desk as he laughed, eliciting a warm smile. By then, the Anbu that guarded the office was aware of Naruto's chakra signature, and she always flared it twice to let them know it was her before she bounded into her Gigi's office, as she loved to do. Well, if not to help me, then what can I do for you? With a solemn expression, Naruto merely removed her mask. Sarutobi's face instantly darkened, and he waved his Anbu away, opening his chakra to activate his office's privacy seals. Naruto remarked, I've got trouble, old man. Ka-san came to the Hitaki compound today. I drew in some of the Kyuubi chakra still lingering in her seal. I was fast enough to get away before she could realize what was happening, but I know I'll have to face her again. And at this point, my body is too weak to handle a large concentration of Biju chakra in my coils. Hiruzen blew out a plume of smoke in thought and grunted. That is quite worrying, but if you thought there was no solution, you would not have even bothered running to me, would you? Naruto gave a small smile. She chirped, yep. I need you to put a suppression seal over the one on my stomach, to keep it from actively drawing in Biju chakra. One that'll be easy to remove once Ka-san isn't near me anymore. With a sharp mind already searching through his extensive knowledge for a desirable solution, Hiruzen muttered, but obviously you cannot run to me every time you need the suppression seal replaced. Suppose you run into Kushina-chan in the market, or anywhere really, and you need to keep from drawing out the Biju chakra within her, it would look suspicious if you had an excuse to leave every time she is around. Yeah, Naruto bit her lip in contemplation and scowled. You're right. What are we going to do, Gigi? The Hokage gave Naruto a comforting smile while softly tousling her hair. I will put the suppression seal on you, and then I will teach you to do it yourself. Hiruzen made the choice. But perhaps it's time you begin learning the finer details of Fuinjutsu, Naruto-chan. The blonde girl cast a suspicious glance at the smiling Kage. What are you plotting in that head of yours, Gigi? The Hokage gave a covert smile. Drawling, you know, the Sarutobi said. A student of mine actually just left my office, complaining about disrespectful masked brats. A beat skipped in Naruto's heart. Unable to finish her sentence, she breathed. You didn't. Laughing a little under his breath, Hiruzen went on. He has no idea why I called him back so suddenly. I'll send him on his way again, but first. Oh no, thought Naruto dreadfully. Gigi, you didn't. Tell me you didn't, please. He'll teach a certain someone a bit of Fuinjutsu. He did, Kami, Naruto thought sadly. Now, said Hiruzen. Let me help you with that seal of yours. I'm so sorry. As she watched Naruto bow at the waist in front of her in apology, Kushina became agitated and said, Now, none of that, to Bane. Seriously Naruto, it's fine. Stop it. The young blonde stood up straight and flashed a pair of sparkling baby blue eyes before asking, really? After just one glance, Kushina was utterly enamored. Why? You, after receiving similar apologies from the blonde a little earlier, Kakashi, Tsukumo, and Minato watched the scene from the sidelines and now enjoyed the awkwardness. The little blonde yelled when Kushina glomped her, pressing her cheeks against hers and rubbing them together lovingly. You are so freaking cute, to Bane. Kushina exclaimed. So cute I just can't stand it. Oh, I love you. I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. The edge of Naruto's mask turned red. When Kushina started pinching her masked cheeks and cooing at her, the blonde laughed and said, So, all forgiven? I love you. I'll take that as a yes. Minato and Tsukumo smiled. Kakashi simply shook his head and sighed, his gray eyes glimmering with a secret chuckle. Well, this place isn't going to be dull at all. Monday Guy was seated next to Naruto, who was seated at her desk between Anko and Obito, according to Uchiha. As the day came to an end, students were already preparing to leave, even though Akira-sensei had sent out superpowered warning sticks of shock. In his mind, Naruto called out, Hey Kurama. The great beast let out a long sigh of agony. But how may I be of assistance? The blonde huffed. Dude, stop being such a condescending jerk. I had a quick question for you. Considering how little your human brain can understand beyond instinct, that's pretty much all you're good for. With a put-out expression on his face, Naruto said, Really, you're acting like a creep. Unfazed, the fox sneered. The blonde gave up and rolled her eyes a lot. Whatever. I had a question for you regarding Saturday. How about it? Why didn't Mom recognize that I was a Jinchuriki? Doesn't everyone who owns a Biju possess this remarkable ability to identify one another? Regardless of whether she possesses Biju chakra or not, your mother is no longer a Jinchuriki. At your meeting, she might have sensed something, but she wouldn't be able to identify it. And she won't even know who you are now that you've chosen to wear a suppression seal around her. It appears that we were fortunate, don't you think, friend? Naruto smiled as he thought. Kurama snorted and brushed the blonde aside with a wave of his many tails before taking a nap. Fool. It was Akira-sensei's last lesson of the day, and that concludes today's claw. A complete maniac flew straight through one of the windows lining the classroom's far walls, scattering glass shards everywhere and causing many of the young children sitting around the room to scream in fear as the young Inuzuka teacher choked off with bulging eyes. Akira-sensei yelled and fell under the weight of the familiar orange toad, face first with his arms dangerously spread out in front of him. Naruto openly stared in shock as the toad landed on top of Akira-sensei. A familiar white-haired man stood on top of the toad, hands on his hips, head thrown back, and he guffawed loudly, causing the blonde to blink. Guy's thick brows furrowed in confusion as he muttered, What in the name of youth? Holy. Exhaled Anko. That creep took out Akira-sensei without even trying. With quick blinks, Obito murmured, Is that a giant frog? The blonde quickly corrected, Toad. She winced in pain for her three friends as they quickly whipped their necks around. You know him. They exclaimed instantly. Akira-sensei cried out, Please get off me. When Jiraiya finally stopped laughing and started arguing with his toad summon about using a door like a normal person, Naruto buried her face in her hands. Damn it, I thought the window was open. Would you stop complaining? She said. Have mercy, Kami. Naruto, get your butt up here, girl. I know who you are, kid, so you're not gonna pull a fast one on me again, Jiraiya yelled. As though attempting to dissolve into her seat and thus erase her presence, Naruto sank deeper into it. In reality, though, she was merely trying to conceal her joy at seeing the perverted fool. Naruto stood up, her eyes squinting shut as she smiled uncontrollably, warmth blossoming in her chest, while her classmates stared and her friends demanded answers with their inquisitive gazes. Hello again, Ero Gigi, she exclaimed with a laugh. I hope you didn't break a hip pulling that stunt. You brat, Jiraiya cried, her face turning red. Naruto reflected. Well, Ero Sennin is now officially in the picture. I'm not disappointed, I can say that. He's as much of a silly jerk now as he was when I was around. Unable to agree anymore, Kurama snorted. Akira. Sensei whimpered, Please, get off of me. Look, Naru, I drew you a picture. Naruto turned to Anko, who was holding up her artwork and grinning sharply. This was because the class had been rewarded with free time for finishing the agenda early that day. Naruto cocked her head to the side, her blonde brows furrowing slightly in confusion as her smile faded a bit. That's a very nice chupacabra, with a crushed expression, Anko said. It's a toad. Naruto cocked her head to the other side. Not at all. It still had a chupacabra-like appearance. An extremely malformed chupacabra. Obito let out a roar of laughter because he could no longer contain it. He screamed, It looks like a turd, it's green and everything. Anko yelled, Obito you ass, and threw a bunch of crayons at the boy, but he ducked, so Guy took the art supplies to his face instead. The boy wearing green rolled his eyes amicably and smiled at Naruto, who smiled back. With dark eyes half-lidded in frustration, Akira. Sensei looked up from the magazine he was reading behind his desk and called out to them. Honesty you four, please don't make a mess. Class is almost over, so try and control yourselves, alright? Obito smiled triumphantly. Sure thing, Sensei. You know we'd never go out of our way to cause you trouble. When the young Inuzuka teacher rolled his eyes and returned to his reading, Naruto and Guy laughed together and smiled again. He was still hurting from yesterday's incident when Jiraiya used his toad summon to crush him, and none of Naruto's friends seemed to give a damn. Anko pulled the amused blonde's gaze to her and said, Naru, it does look like a toad though, right? When Naruto saw the purple-haired girl's agitated expression and realized that Anko had worked hard on the drawing, she rose from her seat next to Guy and pushed Obito away, ignoring his Protestant hey, to take his place next to Anko. Naruto grinned, supporting one cheek on her left fist and her elbow on the desk. I really didn't know what it was at first, but the only turd around here is Obito. What? When Anko snorted and her mouth quirked into a tiny smile, the blonde said, I'll hang it up in my room when I get home today. She felt warmth blossom into her chest. Thanks, Naruto. The blonde accepted the offered piece of paper featuring Anko's vibrant artwork and remarked, Don't worry, I adore it. When Naruto felt someone hit her head, her blue eyes rolled up. To see Obito's pouting face upside down, the blonde tipped her head back. The blonde winced slightly as the boy slapped her masked cheeks gently in reprimand and then pinched and pulled them apart. She smiled as he twisted her cheeks around and said, Quite seriously, not a turd. Maybe, Guy said with a chuckle behind them, but laughing at Anko. Chan was pretty unyouthful of you. Obito removed his stinging punishment from Naruto's masked cheeks. Rolling his eyes, the young Uchiha gave in and said, Alright. I'm sorry, Anko. But seriously guys, she makes fun of me every chance she gets. Naruto sat up straight once more and gently rubbed her cheeks. The blonde said, You're both turds. Problem solved. What? Guy shook his head, white teeth gleaming, and Naruto grinned, bumping his fist. As promised, Naruto hung Anko's gift on the wall across from the door of her bedroom, making it obvious to anyone entering. What the hell is that? When Naruto saw Jiraiya standing in her doorway, his masked face brightened. Wait, what's what? Ero Sennin. Jiraiya said bluntly, I told you to stop calling me that. It's either that or Ero Gigi. Choose man. The toad sage snorted, Screw you. Naruto yelled, You can't talk to me like that, I'm just an innocent little kid. Jiraiya laughed. Yeah, and I'm wearing a pink thong. Naruto's face twisted in agony as she gasped, sick, as a sagging man's butt, strangled by a tiny piece of lingerie, flew past her eyes. Jiraiya laughed and brushed the blonde's antics aside. The Sannin pointed to the photo behind Naruto and remarked, ignoring the subject of my find behind, I still want to know what the heck that is. The blonde woke up, suddenly relieved of all pain. Then she chirped, oh that? My friend drew it for me during free time today. It's a toad. Jiraiya sneered, that's an insult. What? I mean seriously kid, that thing looks like some poor creature summoned from the sorriest pit of hell imaginable. He continued. Quite simply, it's hideous. Your friend's mind must be a dark place. The blonde smiled and said, you're the worst Ero Sennin. The tall fellow grinned. Don't act like you don't love it. Naruto rolled her eyes and laughed, what? Never. However, she did. She missed teasing the pervert so freely, and she loved the weirdo like the father she'd never had. Pulling the blonde out of her reverie, Jiraiya remarked, oh, I forgot I came in here for a reason. Naruto snorted and said, more like barged in. Didn't anyone ever teach you not to burst into a lady's room unannounced? Jiraiya retorted, putting his hands on his hips arrogantly, I thought you were a innocent little kid. The blonde grinned and said, you'd be surprised. Then she became serious and inquired, but anyways, why did you come here Ero Sennin? Oh yeah, Jiraiya said, eagerly. I have yet to tell my old buddy Tsukumo that I'm back in town, so I wanted to surprise him because I heard he's getting off guard duty this evening. The eyes of Naruto widened. You came in here without telling Sake-chan first. Jiraiya widened her eyes. You call a man that's stronger than me Sake-chan? Dude! Exclaimed the blonde. Focus. You can't just waltz in here unannounced. The last time Minato-san did that Tsukumo didn't recognize him for a second and almost killed him with a spatula. With an unexpected sense of calm, Jiraiya observed, that sounds like a very interesting story. But more on the matter at hand. Sensei did mention that you know my old student because he's the teacher of Hitaki's brat now. If Kakashi heard you call him a brat, he'd chop off your bee. Jiraiya cut in blandly, I really don't want to hear that word from a small female child. Naruto grinned triumphantly. Jiraiya beckoned the little blonde over, rolling his dark eyes. The sage said, all right, let's head to the living room, jokes and all. If he walks right in and sees me, he's less inclined to murder me with kitchen utensils. The blonde whispered, while wearing a fluffy pink apron. What? Nothing. Chirped Naruto as he bounded down the hall and past the tall man. Jiraiya shook his head and trailed behind the small fireball. A few minutes later, the idiots were politely playing cards in Tsukumo's living room. Jiraiya slammed a fan of cards onto the glass coffee table and exclaimed, four of a kind. With her blonde brows furrowed, Naruto looked up from the comfortable chair she was sitting in and peered at the man over her own cards. What? I thought we were playing goldfish. The sage spluttered, are you serious? How is that even possible? The blonde recognized 3 chakra signatures that arrived at the front door at that precise moment. After a moment of jangling keys, the door began to swing open. Naru-chan, I'm home. Jiraiya choked when he saw her royal flush after Naruto threw her cards onto the table. His face flushed as he sputtered, you little shit. Naruto laughed and hurried to glomp the other tall man who had just crossed the threshold of the front door. Welcome home, Sake-chan, the blonde said, her masked smile deep in his stomach as she gave him a tender squeeze. Tsukumo ruffled the top of her long, unruly hair as she laughed. With Kakashi at his heels, Minato stepped around the hugging pair and joked, what are we, chopped liver? Naruto pulled away from Tsukumo to give the 17-year-old a mischievous smile and remarked, nah, you're so innocent Minato, more like lamb chops. And Kakashi is minced puppy. The youngest Hitaki crossed his arms and deadpanned, ha ha. So I suppose I'm the side of frog legs? With the exception of Naruto, everyone turned to greet the new speaker. Sensei. Jiraiya. Sama. Who's this clown? Jiraiya sighed and gave Kakashi the stink eye before turning back to Tsukumo and grinning and giving him the thumbs up. Rude. Long time no see Tsukumo. And you too, oh genius student of mine. Hello and hugs all around. As Tsukumo and Minato made their way to the Toad Sannin, already catching up, the youngest Hitaki snorted and shuffled over to Naruto. Kakashi whispered, you let that guy into the house? Naruto snorted, more like he let himself in and barged into my room. But anyways, he's cool. I met him on Saturday after I ran off and hung with him after school yesterday. I know I should have said something, but after I came home from hanging with him I was too tired to mention it. The majority of their time together had been spent at a dango stand, where they had exchanged vicious blows and gotten to know one another. Naruto would cherish it until the end of her life because it was amazing. With dark eyes that pierced the blonde, Kakashi asked sharply, "You spent hours with that guy yesterday and didn't say anything. And what the heck is wrong with the Anbu guard?" Naruto scowled. The blonde said, "Calm down, Kashi. He's not some pedo. He's just gonna be my temporary sensei. And it's cool, right? He knows your dad. The only reason he didn't drop me off yesterday and say hi is because he's been gone for a long time and wanted to get in some research." Kakashi sighed. "What's with the air quotes? What kind of research are you trying to get at?" With a wry tilt of his mouth, Naruto replied, "I think it's better for you to just get to know him." As Jiraiya let out a loud laugh, both children stopped their brief conversation, and Kakashi rolled his eyes at the cryptic response. With a loving smile, Minato remarked, "Man sensei, you haven't changed a bit." Tsukumo laughed and said, "It's good to see you again, Jiraiya Sama." When Naruto muttered, "You are old," the Sannin gave her a shady look and waved off, saying, "Oh please. The formality makes me feel old. Just call me Jiraiya and tack on a san. If you feel weird," she said. With a smile, Tsukumo said, "Jiraiya.san then." Kakashi muttered, "Will anyone bring up the fact that he's in our house without permission?" Naruto gave him a reassuring shoulder pat and said, "Don't fight it, Kashi. You can't ignore his charm. Succumb to his goofiness." Kakashi sneered, but his eyes wrinkled slightly in amusement. "Idiot." Minato and Jiraiya sat on the couch, while Tsukumo sat in Naruto's abandoned chair and asked, "So what brings you here, Jiraiya.san?" The sage explained, presumably omitting the fact that Gigi had given him the assignment to allay suspicions. "Oh. Well, I decided I'll be Naruto's temporary Fuinjutsu instructor. She seems to have some potential for it, and I didn't want to see any talent wasted, you know?" However, Naruto was aware that the sage didn't understand why he had to teach her, and he would never learn if she had her way. "I'm gonna get her well acquainted with the basics before I'm off again." Tsukumo, pleased, said, "Naruto-chan, I had no idea you were interested in Fuinjutsu." She pondered for a moment before responding, "Yeah, well, I heard it's pretty useful." "Are you kidding?" said Minato. "It's easily the most well-crafted shinobi art there is." Jiraiya rolled his eyes to the sky and moaned, "Oh Kami, don't get him started on that subject. If you do, he can go on longer and louder than that motor-mouthed girlfriend of his." Silence fell suddenly. Jiraiya watched his student's face turn red, and his mouth dropped open. Silently, "No," he said. "No, oh my, you finally asked her out, didn't you?" Kakashi interrupted, "Yup. Saturday actually." "What?" yelled Jiraiya. "I could have been there. I'd probably have ruptured something laughing at the utter awkwardness of it all. Damn it." Minato buried his face in his hands and muttered, "Please stop talking." Tsukumo did not object, saying, all right. That's enough of enjoying the suffering of others for one day." Kakashi smirked at his agitated sensei and muttered under his breath, "You can never have too much of that." Jiraiya looked at Tsukumo and snorted. "So that bucket of sunshine over there is your boy?" he inquired. "He's grown a bit from that little 2-year-old I remember." Tsukumo nodded and puffed up his chest a little. "Hi. This is my boy, Kakashi Hitaki." Instead of raising a lazy arm and saying, "Yo," as Naruto had half expected, Kakashi crossed his arms and gave him a cool nod. Jiraiya smiled broadly. "I bet you don't remember me at all, Kashi, brat." As Naruto noticed Kakashi's left brow twitch slightly in annoyance, she made an effort to hide her amusement. "No, I have no idea who you are." Tsukumo was able to stop the madman from calling forth a toad in the center of the living room, but everyone in the room moaned as that inane statement set off the Sannin's customary annoying introduction. "Anyways," Jiraiya emphasized, as though he hadn't been the one who initially caused the situation to go awry. "I used to hang you upside down by your feet. You always made the cutest little shriek of terror when I did that." When Kakashi gave her a scathing look with her ears blazing, Naruto choked on a bark of laughter and raised her hands in surrender. Tsukumo laughed, startled when his son gave him a glare. As he shuffled past his irate son, he said quickly and sheepishly, I'll go get us some drinks, The youngest Hitaki huffed, her arms crossed and tight, saying, "I hope you don't think I'm going to respond to such a demeaning name." "Kashi. Brat?" Minato interrupted, grinning a little. But I think it's cute." With a dark tone, Kakashi said, "Keep laughing sensei. I'm sure Kushina.san would just love to hear about that very manly scream of yours when you walked in on Guy working out last week." Minato quickly stopped talking after that, and Naruto shook her head when the blonde teenager sank in his chair, his face burning. Jiraiya yelled, "Minato, You're doing it wrong. If you want to humiliate a small child, you need to make sure they have no room for retaliation. Sakumo returned with a pitcher, several glasses of lemonade, and a pink tray adorned with chibi strawberries. When Jiraiya flashed before his son and effortlessly lifted him off his feet, the White Fang did nothing at all. Kakashi raged, What are you doing? Put me down, you idiot. The man guffawed, What's with the mask, Kashi? Brat. Did you grow a pair of fish lips while I was gone? Let go of me, you overgrown buffoon. Let's see what's under that mask, Jiraiya giggled broadly as she sang. When her sensei threw Kakashi up and grabbed him by one of his ankles, Naruto's mouth dropped to her feet. Before losing his temper and throwing a tanto, the boy futilely thrashed around in protest. Kakashi tried to cut the guffawing man's throat by curling up. This did nothing more than allow Jiraiya enough time to grab Kakashi's mask with his free hand. Naruto's eyes must have popped out from their wideness because they were now drooping down her cheeks. Jiraiya sighed and let go of the murderous Hitaki, saying, Okay, yeesh. With his eyes glaring at the white-haired man, Kakashi skittered away from him after flipping cleanly and landing on his feet. The blonde could now see Naruto's bare face clearly as she stood next to him. She couldn't help but look twice. Her face turned crimson. He is incredibly adorable. Even though Naruto had already accepted that she would never see Kakashi's face, she would never be the same after seeing it. Taking in the slightly plump cheeks and the small beauty mark under the left corner of his mouth, Naruto smacked her hands against her masked cheeks, forcing herself not to coo at the angry boy next to her. She squealed as she thought grimly, That mole is going to be the death of me. Gah, he's so incredibly cute that I want to pinch his cheeks. Much like a puppy. A cute puppy that is completely murderous. Naruto was oblivious to the fact that Sakumo was bravely suppressing his own laughter as his son bared his teeth at one of the strongest ninja ever born in Konoha like an angry puppy, and that Minato had burst into equal parts tears and laughter. Sakumo gritted his teeth, wetness pinching at the corners of his eyes, gut trembling as he used all the restraint he possessed to avoid falling the same way Minato had. Kakashi, please put away your tanto. With a sigh, Kakashi pulled his mask back over his button nose, his glare as noticeable as it had been off. I'm going to cut off your... With trembling laughter, Sakumo said, Son, and he started shakily pouring glasses of lemonade. You must know I'm not going to allow you to try and attack a comrade. Even after the enraged boy put his blade back in its sheath, bloody murder was still promised by his gray eyes. Minato wheezed from the couch, Please tell me somebody got that on camera. Jiraiya scowled and crossed his arms before glaring at Kakashi, saying, Oh damn, you're still adorable. And you still have an atrocious temper. When Kakashi's tanto reappeared, Naruto restrained him. So he's a pervert. Yeah, a super pervert. Unfortunately. Kakashi muttered, Idiots. I'm surrounded by idiots. During dinner, Jiraiya had spent the majority of the evening making innuendos that he thought the two kids there wouldn't notice. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your point of view, despite her appearance, Naruto wasn't born 7 years ago, and Kakashi was a certified genius. The two kids were in the dark blues, dull grays, and blacks of Kakashi's room. Hitaki said, they sat on Kakashi's bed, as she brushed her waist-length mane behind Naruto. Assuming Naruto couldn't finish 10 bowls of red bean soup in less than 60 seconds, he had lost a wager. The winner had the opportunity to request a favor from the loser, which the user was unable to refuse. In all honesty, Kakashi ought to have realized by then how effortlessly Naruto could store a satisfying meal. The Hitaki worked a knot out of the blonde's hair and muttered, What are you giggling about? Laughing, Naruto said, Nothing special. Just thinking about how gullible you are sometimes. That's rich coming from you. She sneered, Whatever Kashi. Brat. Don't call me that. Kakashi sighed, his coils twirling with irritated chakra. Naruto turned around for a moment to show the boy how amused she was, and she smiled. The Hitaki stopped his careful brushing and crossed his arms, huffing once more. A moment later, Naruto turned to the irritated Chunin and cooed, Ah, don't be like that. The blonde turned on top of the boy's black sheets and turned to face him. Her brows furrowed slightly as she observed the boy observing her in a moody manner. Kakashi. She said at last. What is it? Why do you wear that mask? The smallest Hitaki merely arched one of his silver brows as if anticipating the question. Observing the impatience in Naruto's face when he gave her that flat look, he responded, At first there wasn't really a reason. My father wore them on missions, and I suppose it just came naturally that I began wearing them too. I was comfortable in them. Because old ladies probably attacked you when bare-faced. Kakashi finished without missing a beat, but he gave Naruto a quick glare when he smiled. And decided I would continue wearing them. They're also good for protecting my nose from strong scents, because I have a keen sense of smell. The blonde was aware that he was telling the truth, but she also realized that his face was actually hidden by the mask. When he realized that the mask prevented most people from attacking him affectionately, he kept wearing it because there was no way that women of all ages hadn't fallen in love with him. Really, it was understandable. Even Naruto was startled when she realized how much she had wanted to smother him and pinch his cheeks. She gave a snort. "You poor bastard." Kakashi frowned. Playfully pushing his shoulder, Naruto remarked, "Ah, come on Kashi, don't be like that." The boy didn't even bother to uncross his arms, he just rolled his eyes. He said, "Whatever. I'm surprised it took you this long to ask me that anyways. You know, about how you looked under your mask, and why you wear your mask, but I just figured if and when you wanted me to know, you'd tell me," the blonde said, disregarding the boy's impolite muttered, "Obviously." Kakashi's eyebrows shot up in skepticism. "So all those times trying to see under my mask were a ruse?" The wry response from Naruto was, "Now I never said that." After scoffing, Kakashi started to look at her with interest. "Why do you wear a mask?" Naruto stopped and winced inwardly. "Yes, almost everyone with whom I'm close has seen my face more than once. Pervy Sage, Mom, and Dad are the only ones who haven't." Naruto would acknowledge that she didn't want many people to recognize her because she was too similar to her parents and her whiskers made her stand out, but she hadn't been very successful at keeping the secret. She shuddered at the idea of attempting to explain why the child shared her birthmarks if she had been alive when the boy Naruto was born. "Obviously I wear it 'cause I look badass." Kakashi gave a snort. "Who told you that lie?" "You are such a jerk." Naruto frowned and complained. Kakashi's eyes widened with joy. His pillow was thrust into Naruto's face. A little blonde training was found beneath the gentle rays of the waning moonlight at about 5 in the morning. The cherry blossom trees were angular, twisted silhouettes in the moonlit darkness, and it was still completely dark outside. Standing barefoot on top of the Hitaki Koi pond, Naruto moved fluidly through katas from her future self's taijutsu, which had been adjusted to fit her diminutive frame. She walked lightly and gracefully over the cool water, never disturbing the koi that were sleeping below. Finally, over the faint breeze, the voice of the person crouching on Naruto's favorite rock by the pond was heard. "You're up early." "Maybe," Naruto muttered as he changed positions. "And you're here early. Did you ever even leave?" "I think you know that I didn't." With a relaxed stance, the blonde turned to face Jiraiya and observed the tall man. Naturally, he was correct. She had never felt his chakra retreat before bed, and she could still feel it close by when she woke up. "Arrow Sennin, you're as sharp as ever. You know, Tsukumo was curious about how we met, and why I decided to teach you Fuinjutsu. Minato was still around when I told them that story. Of course, I left out what had drawn me to you, and the fact that Hokage Sama ordered me to teach you. So basically you said we ran into each other and I ribbed on you, then ran off." "Basically," he said in a bland manner. Naruto was aware that the atmosphere was still heavy, even though her lips lifted slightly beneath her mask. Both Tsukumo and Minato seemed to pick up on the fact that I wasn't willing to tell them why I was going to teach you. Naruto responded, Yeah, they're both a pair of sharp dudes." With a shadowed expression, Jiraiya said, "Kid, if there's one thing you're going to learn about me, it's I'm subtle only when I want to be. And I've already learned that you're the same." When Naruto decided it was time to take a hint and get right to the point, she smiled and closed her eyes for a moment before looking up once more. The blonde tilted her head to the side and asked, her blue eyes glinting in the moonlight, "What did draw you to me? You never did bring that up." She was aware of the reason, of course, but she had no intention of telling him. "Simply put," Jiraiya said, "nature chakra. You can use it." "Yes." Naruto thought grimly. I knew he could sense at least that much. Even though his contract no longer includes my name, he still has me. Oh no. The Sennin went on, "I couldn't tell where I was picking up those chakra traces from, but it's that arm. The one you've always got covered." When the white-haired man slid off her favorite rock and onto the waters, Naruto squinted and backed away, becoming a little stiffer. Even though they were now only a yard apart, Naruto could still see how tall her sensei was and how much danger she would face if he thought she posed a threat. Her lips were pursed. "Arrow Sennin," Naruto uttered purposefully. "The Hokage assigned you as my sensei. So obviously you're aware that I'm not some sinister character." He grunted and stepped forward, making the blonde take a step back. I know you're curious, Naruto said. His upbeat tone vanished. But you don't need to be. This is my arm, and I'm not gonna tell you anything I don't want to if the Hokage didn't tell you already. So I need you to back off. Jiraiya started. Sensei ordered me to teach you, ignoring her barely concealed caution. And I can see that you want to be taught by me. I can see that you trust me, that you've trusted me the moment you laid eyes on me. Naruto tensed up. Even in the darkness of the early morning, she could see that he had squinted his eyes. In a quiet voice, Jiraiya remarked, "But I don't know you. So why do you look at me like you've known me for years?" Shit, thought Naruto. Shit. I was aware of it, I was certain he would notice. I've been behaving like I know him too well, but how could I not? Ero Sennin is here. How could I not hold on to him as soon as I saw him? Jiraiya remarked, "You've got a lot of secrets, kid. That much is apparent, and I know that the only person who knows them all are the Hokage. But if you want me to trust you the same way you trust me." Naruto gasped for air. The Toad Sage whispered, "It's only a matter of time. There's something about you. I feel it. And if you don't tell me the truth in time." The words, "I'll find out myself," were omitted. When a silver streak separated her from the towering white-haired man, Naruto let out a small gasp. The invader snarled, "Ma," and grabbed Naruto's left arm, drawing her to their side. "You two are a couple of weirdos, out before sunrise with such serious expressions." Alarmed, Naruto blinked as tears leaked from her eyes and soaked into the cloth shoulder that was being gently pressed against her face. The blonde tried to look up at him, but she stopped when his hand kept pressing her face against his shoulder. "Kakashi?" she rasped. He held his Tonto's hilt in his free hand. "Naruto, if you wanted to train so bad, you could have just came to get me." Then she stammered, I. The gloomy mood was broken when Jiraiya gave a funny snort, which made the blonde wince. With his hands on his hips and his head shook, the Sennin said, "Cool your jets, brat. We were just talking about lesson plans. I wasn't doing anything to your little girlfriend, alright?" As Kakashi relaxed slightly, Naruto finally managed to raise her head off his shoulder and complained, "Ero Sennin, that last part was seriously uncalled for." The Hitaki said calmly, "Whatever. Don't you have anything important to do?" There was a bark of laughter from the Gamma Sennin. "Well, that's a dismissal if I ever heard one. Not that I actually care, but I do have plans, so I will be taking my leave." Because Kakashi's hand was still securely gripping the back of her neck, Naruto was unable to fully face her sensei as she turned her head and peered at him through her unruly bangs. The blonde could see the bright smile Jiraiya sent her in the lightening sky, telling her that nothing would change between them going forward and that he would actively be trying to discover what she was trying to conceal. Unless he was told not to, of course. Naruto, however, suspected that Gigi would say something along the lines of, "Why don't you tell him the truth? Despite what many people think, he is trustworthy and dependable." Naruto snorted inwardly. She wanted to tell him, of course, but she didn't want to overburden others with the information about what lay ahead. She didn't want to bear the blame for Jiraiya's suffering and anxiety. She needed Gigi, so she had to tell him even though she hadn't wanted anyone to know. Jiraiya rubbed his hands together and snickered, a lecherous grin spreading across his face. "Yes, my plans. Security at my favorite research sites are quite lax at this time of morning." Just as Naruto shook her head and tilted her lips in a loving smile, Kakashi muttered, "Idiot." Jiraiya gave a thumbs up and vanished in a whirl of leaves, his cheeks flushed. "Well, later kiddies," he roared. Kakashi's other hand dropped from the hilt of his Tonto to cup her cheek as his first slid from the back of her neck. As he gently wiped away her tears with his thumbs, Naruto gazed at him in surprise. When he smiled, his mask moved slightly and both of his eyes arched, making her heart flutter. "Crybaby," he muttered to himself. When her face began to heat up, Naruto was genuinely perplexed, and her confusion only grew when Kurama eventually appeared and openly laughed at her. The Biju chuckled and said, "Naruto, you are such a fool. What a blind idiot. However, in that sense, you are no better than that silver brat." Naruto jerked away from the Hitaki's hands as her temper flared, crossing her arms and pouting angrily with her bottom lip protruding. "I am not," she exclaimed. "Yes, you are." With a patronizing slant in his eyes, Kakashi remarked, "Whatever helps you sleep at night." "Kakashi, you utter jerk." The boy dodged the enraged blonde's suddenly spawning chakra arms, hardly blinking. "What the hell did you do?" I don't know, I just activated it and the whole thing just blew up." "A barrier. You were supposed to be creating a barrier, so How in the name of all that is sexy, did you manage to set the whole training ground on fire, and then cause it to explode? I told you I don't know, and stop yelling at me so I can think. Think. Clearly you weren't doing much of that when you blew up the training grounds. Oh my god, could you please stop? It was an accident? Sensei is going to kill me, there's no training ground anymore. I'm sorry, alright? Sorry is not going to put training ground 3 back on the face of the earth. I know. Sorry Ero Sennin. I told you not to call me that. But it's okay I guess, I know a few jutsu that may be able to fix this. Now come here, let's try this again. We'll see if you can do this without killing any more of God's creatures. Will you be playing with him anytime soon? Beneath her mask, Naruto's mouth opened into a malevolent smile. Come on, Kurama, it's entertaining to watch the pervert wriggle. I will acknowledge that, but unless it's your former self combined with genjutsu, there is no way someone could be so incompetent at something. If you continue to delay your own advancement, he will start to suspect something. 2 weeks have passed already. Ah, buddy, please let me play a little longer. The blonde complained. I promise that I will soon become serious. I'm simply enjoying my childhood before I have to begin making changes to the future. Enough, huffed the fox. Stop playing around with the toad and follow his instructions so he can teach you something new. You actually have the potential for Fuinjutsu. He will have more motivation to look for your secrets the longer you play around. Naruto lost his sense of humor. Her brows furrowed and her lips pursed in disgust. Naruto was sitting over an empty scroll in Training Ground 4 at this point. Jiraiya had told him to stay there and not leave until she had made a storage seal that wouldn't blow up in their faces. Naruto's sitting form caught fire as the sun's languid rays spilled orange light into the tree. Surrounded clearing of the training grounds as evening crept closer to daybreak. After giving Naruto instructions to make a storage seal, Ero Sennin used a Doden Jutsu to conjure a wall to hide behind. He was looking at the 7-year-old's back from behind his cover, which was several feet away. Jiraiya yelled, "Why are you just sitting there? I've got this sense of foreboding. You're way too quiet, brat." The blonde, irritated by the thoughts her partner had evoked, exhaled violently, her nostrils flaring. Of course, Kurama was correct. Naruto was able to comprehend all universal things, thanks to the gift of the Rakudo Sennin. Therefore, it's not that she didn't understand a technique she was learning, rather, it was just that she was too young to perform some of them without suffering serious consequences. The inner workings of chakra and other universal elements were understandable to her. She had acquired Hagoromo's power, so she inherited this ability. With it, she could make the most of techniques by utilizing these same elements. Because she comprehended them, she was able to accomplish this without even training with them. She simply knew them. Understanding does not imply that she could explain them to someone. Naruto would acknowledge that it was one of her strongest abilities. She was able to quickly learn techniques that were far more advanced than those of a Kage or Jonin shinobi. She would be a formidable opponent if she lived long enough to attain the age of her former life. Even as a young child, she was still able to understand techniques, but without the right training, she would die while using strong ones. She needed the strength to carry out what she could comprehend, which is why she trained so hard. Since she was not a genius, she did not want to be called such. Naruto had acquired everything the first time around by working hard, being stubborn, and wanting to keep what was valuable safe. Her current self might be seen as a genius due to the residual effects of her previous life. To be honest, she didn't like that. Despite everyone's admiration for Naruto, she would always know the truth. It would be obvious to her that it was a lie. Furthermore, Naruto didn't believe she could manage to add yet another lie to the ones she was already spinning all the time. She was getting so used to it. She detested that. She used to take great satisfaction in speaking her mind and being honest with herself, her nindo, and those who mattered to her. She was merely a liar now. An exception to the period in which there was no business yet. If Naruto was telling the truth, she wasn't holding up her Fuinjutsu training for amusement. She knew Jiraiya would notice her aptitude for it, so she was stalling. The power to absorb anything he felt he might want to teach her, after which she would have no choice but to continue lying to him. She was disgusted by that thought. Though she was equally disgusted by the idea of causing him grief, she didn't want to lie to anyone, much less the person who had ripped a huge hole in her being when he died. The sorrow he would surely experience if she revealed the future to him. His sensei's death, his teammates' betrayal, and the collapse of his students in aim. That was not something Naruto wanted to be in charge of. She was afraid. She didn't like being so unsure. She had to choose between telling him the truth and lying to him, but either way, she would feel terrible. When did I start being so self-centered? Naruto's fingers slipped through the ink brush, which clattered across the open scroll parchment before gently rolling away. She had wide blue eyes. Would telling him cause him pain? No, it's worse. If I told him, I would be the one causing his suffering, which would be painful for me. At her sides, Naruto's fists clenched. I can't bear the idea of hurting him. I don't want to bear the repercussions of my own behavior. When did I start acting like such a coward? Her upper lip curled into a slight snarl as she thought. I genuinely don't think Ero Sennin is incapable of handling the truth. He can, I'm sure. He can definitely handle knowing that I'm here, if I can handle being in the past. I simply don't know what I'm running away from. Naruto. The blonde winced as she glanced up and blinked at the young Toad Sennin's irritated face. She hadn't even noticed him coming because she had been so preoccupied. The man huffed, hands on his hips, and eyed the blonde with a shrewdness that many believed he was incapable of using. I've been calling you for the past 2 minutes. What are you thinking about over here so deeply? Naruto stood up slowly and shook her head. She looked at the man out of the corner of her eye and moved away from that questioning stare. She said in a low voice, I'll stop joking around so much, tomorrow I'll do better. But for today, I'm gonna head home, okay? The blonde completely turned away and started to leave, but she froze when she felt a big, hot hand resting on her head. Her bangs were ruffled by the hand. Jiraiya whispered, cheer up Naruto. I don't know what's bugging you, but don't let it keep you down too long, alright? Gloomy doesn't suit you. Despite the affection warming the inside of her chest, Naruto snorted. Sure. I promise I'll figure it out soon, geezer. You brat. Snorted Jiraiya. With a chuckle, Naruto took off and headed home, her adoring smile belying the teasing laughter she left behind. Thank you, sensei. After kicking the door shut behind her, Naruto stuffed her house key into her pants pocket and muttered, Tadaima. Kakashi, curled up on one of the living room couches, looked up from the scroll he was studying and said, Okari. Kakashi studied the reserved blonde for a few seconds before raising one silver brow in inquiry. Naruto dismissed the boy's worry with a wave before heading to her bedroom down the hall. Don't worry about it, Kakashi, I've just got something I need to figure out on my own. The boy returned tolerantly, returning his gaze to his scroll. Alright, he said. But if you're sulking around longer than 2 days, I'm telling Dad you need a hug or something. Inwardly pleased by Kakashi's own unique style of fussing, Naruto sneered. The blonde sneered, Ma, I think you're worried about me, jerkface. Kakashi snorted, crinkling in amusement despite never taking their eyes off the text in front of them. You wish, short stack. As she walked down the hall, Naruto laughed and felt a slight improvement in her mood. She already knew that Tsukumo would be on border patrol until the following morning. Once in her room, Naruto sat down squarely in the middle of the floor, crossed her legs, and threw off her track jacket onto her bed. The blonde recalled her previous thoughts, and the laughter she had experienced moments before faded. A well-known sense of loneliness throbbed in her heart. She banished the stinging behind them and slid her eyes shut. Lulling her consciousness into a steadily deeper state of meditation, Naruto pursed her lips. She needed to reflect. Kurama was aware of Naruto's fears, of course. Despite how corny it may sound, he knew because Naruto already did it deep within herself. Naruto was aware of her struggles, but she was still unable to accept them because she was disgusted by her own inner monologue. She disregarded her own feelings because she felt cowardly about them and fooled herself into thinking that what she was ignoring was more than just the surface. Not long ago, Kurama would have growled at her because he thought Naruto was weak because of her feelings. However, he was acquainted with Naruto. He knew her pretty damn well, but not as well as she did, since the brat was still surprising him at the most unexpected times. He was aware that Naruto was a stubborn, strong-willed brat with a heart that was too large for her frame. He didn't hold it against her feelings. Although he was unable to empathize, he understood that Naruto was a human being and that her simplicity to her peers belied her complexity. Her personal experiences made her feel things very strongly, and she had a great deal of empathy and compassion for other people. Because she allowed herself to be hurt when others hurt her, Naruto loved them so much that it hurt. After the great sage's age, Kurama had never encountered a human like her. Kurama was aware that what was holding her down would not last for very long. As usual, she would put her grievance behind her and come to terms with the fact that it was just another aspect of who she was. The amount of faith Kurama found himself feeling for a human being made him feel a little disgusted. It had been a long time since he had a friend. The Biju snorted and sat down on his stomach, idly examining the distant wall of Naruto's mind center. Kurama growled, "Silly girl. How dare you feel alone with the greatest of all Biju standing beside you?" Naruto opened her eyes and looked at the clock above her bedroom door. She had roughly 2 hours before she would have to go to school if it hadn't been Saturday, and it was a completely different day. The blonde thought, "I've been meditating for more than 10 hours, she was shocked. "Yes, the Hitaki boy did peek in on you a couple of times to make sure you were okay," Kurama remarked. "Wow, I don't think I've ever been so focused during my sage training or outside of battle." "Yes," Drew led Kurama. "Just remember to be more aware of your surroundings. You can't ignore everything else because you're so focused on something. Such foolishness is dangerous, we're in unfamiliar territory." Naruto appeased, rolling her eyes up to the sky. Hi. I'll exercise greater caution." "That's okay," Kurama sniffed. "On another note, it appears that you have yet to find a solution to your current situation." Naruto mumbled, his shoulders slumping at the reminder. "Nah. No matter how I approach the problem, I've been coming up with nothing, but I have a feeling that it's right in front of me and I should be seeing it, but I'm not." "Stupid kid." Kurama scoffed. "Make sure you truly find a solution for your problems if you insist on worrying about such things." Gah. In exasperation, Naruto raised her hands and tossed her hair. "Kurama, don't bother me. I'm trying, don't you see that?" "Yes," Naruto tensed, taken aback by Kurama's rumbling voice's lack of inherent threat. "I can see you're having difficulties," the Biju said. "However, Naruto, don't expect me to pamper you. You're simply avoiding the thing that has been bothering you. Don't do that anymore. Would you please act more confident and get your head out of your ass?" After receiving a severe reprimand, Naruto nodded in comprehension, knowing that Kurama wouldn't notice but that he would be able to comprehend that she felt better after hearing his words. Naruto muttered as she ran a hand through her shaggy bangs, "I know what I gotta go. I need to spend more time with Ero Sennin. If I do that, I'll know for sure what about him makes me so uneasy about telling him anything." The Biju seemed pleased with this new development and said, "Very well. First I'm gonna go shower, then I'll go perv hunting." After spending several hours in the same position, Naruto's knees popped as she stood up. Naruto went from her bedroom to the Hitaki bath after gathering her grooming supplies. Naruto paused for a moment and grinned quietly under her mask. "Oh, and Kurama, thank you. That was exactly what I needed." Kurama snorted, "Fool." Naruto wasn't sure if she had imagined the Biju's tone had a loving lilt. After taking a quick shower, Naruto walked out of the Hitaki residence and headed deeper into the village, toward one of Jiraiya's favorite hangouts. It was the same bathhouse where she had first met him. Her heart ached as she recalled how much the older Jiraiya had been her mentor, how much she had admired him, and how he had come to like her despite his complaints about her being a brat. That's it, she understood. Naruto's breath caught as his eyes widened. Naruto, who had been hopping over roof tiles, lost her focus and stumbled, yelling as she fell over the side of an apartment building and into an alleyway between it and the clothing store next to it. The blonde was caught roughly in someone's waiting arms after she flipped and managed to land nimbly on her feet. As the blonde stared at her solemn savior, a feeling of déjà vu pricked her senses. "Is this going to be a recurring occurrence, Naruto-san? Ibiki!" exclaimed the blonde, her masked cheeks flushed at her foolishness. The 7-year-old put the blonde on her feet with a small roll of his eyes and put his hands in his pants pockets. Naruto decided to ignore the raised eyebrow at her comment and went on, "But seriously Ibiki, what are you doing skulking around Konoha's alleyways anyways? The place where you keep the cats is on the other side of the village, so what the heck are you doing?" "Okay, I'll admit I've been a little clumsy lately." The boy looked at the blonde and shrugged, saying, "I was just going for a walk, and you? You were in a hurry." "Well yeah, I was perv hunting, and they're kinda slippery. Though, I'm sure they've gotta be, what, with all the peeping and how vicious angry naked chicks can be." Ibiki watched the babbling blonde, both white brows rising high on his head, almost to his hairline. "Ah, yeah, that probably sounded really weird," Naruto laughed, shyly stroking the back of her rambunctious head. Ibiki confirmed, and shuffled away from the blonde to sit on a crate next to a pile of them by the clothes outlet, where he had most likely fallen. Leaning back on the crate, the boy studied the blonde while placing his hands behind him. Ibiki said, cocking his head slightly to the side, "Looks like I'm not the one with something on their mind this time." Naruto blinked at the boy in alarm. "What makes you say that?" "You were in a hurry, trying to find someone, but you were so distracted you tripped and fell down here," Ibiki said. "And you were ranting." Though you're loud sometimes, you don't talk if you don't have to, so something's probably bothering you. Ma, Naruto said with an untruthful smile that arched his eyes. You're pretty sharp, Ibiki. The boy rolled his eyes and sighed. Just tell me what's wrong. Naruto watched the boy in complete bewilderment, her eyes widening and her mouth hanging open as her smile vanished. Did Ibiki want to hear about her problems? Why he would want to do such a thing was beyond Naruto's comprehension. They weren't actually friends, not that she wasn't flattered or anything. Of course, she hoped that one day they would be, but for now, the boy only gave her a passing nod when she called out to him after spotting him somewhere. Naruto swallowed. Why do you want to know? The boy shrugged once more. It's not like I'll perish if you don't tell me, but you did help me understand something the last time we talked. With her brows knitted in contemplation, the blonde asked, so you're just paying me back or something? That didn't sit well with her. Because she had attempted to assist them, she didn't want anyone to feel as though they owed her anything. Naruto considered silent or spoken expressions of gratitude sufficient. Ibiki acknowledged, I'm not so sure that's what it is. But, you did help me, so it wouldn't hurt to help you too. Naruto gave a small smile. She deduced that Ibiki genuinely wanted to assist her if he could, but he also wanted to repay the favor. Well, despite all of those grunts and that expressionless face, he really is a nice guy. Naruto approached the boy and pulled a crate from the pile next to him, saying, okay then. Ibiki studied her with sharp dark eyes and grunted, Before letting out a sigh, the boy tilted his head slightly to the side. In order for them to sit face to face, Naruto placed the wooden structure in front of the one Ibiki was sitting on. As the boy put it, is this person trying to figure out what you're hiding? Naruto gave a single nod. And they know the secret is something you feel will hurt them? Ero Sennin is aware that it's significant and that I want to keep him and as many other people in the dark, though perhaps not exactly. The blonde gave a shrug. He's a really observant guy. Ibiki pursed his lips and took another long look at the blonde in the mask. This person knows that you don't want them to know, and that they may get hurt when they find out, but still try to find your secret anyway. The kid started. So, what's the problem? The person is trying even though they know what you're hiding might be something they don't like. They still deal with you. Doesn't that mean that they'll probably still deal with you even if they get hurt by the truth? Naruto's gaze expanded. That was it. The blonde thought, we've begun to get to know each other. I've started developing a new relationship with his younger self, and he's once again become my sensei. Although I've been holding back, I really enjoy that. Our new bond makes me nervous because... Ibiki saw the healthful peach tone of the blonde's face fade from what was visible. That was it. Her new relationship with Jiraiya did not provide her with the same level of assurance as the one she remembered, so she kept asking herself this question without realizing it, which drove her into depression. She was unable to accurately predict this Ero Sennin's reactions. Would he continue to work with her? Would he take her in? The truth is, I'm worried that if I tell him the truth, he might not accept me. Then it came to light. Kurama's satisfaction lingered in the back of her mind. With a sulky huff, the Biju muttered that she was taking too long to discover the truth. I'm sorry, friend. HMPH, dumb girl, he grumbled. At last, Naruto saw what had been preventing her from moving forward. The third had a softer heart than Jiraiya had ever had. However, he was still a young shinobi in the midst of battle, unsoftened by age, love, or hope for his godchild. It was possible that Jiraiya would turn Naruto away. She was an ally as well as a threat. He's Ero Sennin, but he's not my Ero Sennin, was the reality. That made Naruto frightful. What if I'm rejected by him? What if he discovers who I am and everything breaks down? Naruto shook her head, her eyes becoming a little less wide. Why'd I act like such a coward? When I'm meant to be guiding the future toward peace, how can I be thinking of myself in this way? Kurama reminded her, you have turned into a child. It is understandable, even though it may be annoying. This is pitiful. I know so much, even though I'm only a child. How could I have allowed myself to feel this? You told the Uchiha that you couldn't control your emotions, didn't you? That you were hurt when he was hurting, carrying burdens by himself. Why can't this be the same as the love you had for your brother, which was beyond your control? Naruto, why can't this be something you just can't control? Ibiki blinked as she observed the blonde gradually rising from her slumber. Standing, she combed her shaggy bangs with a stressed hand. How have you handled fear in the past? Naruto acknowledged. At first, I ignored fear. I hesitated because of it. But, however, as I grew older and understood that my friends were more important to me than being afraid, You showed bravery. Naruto concluded, and then the fear went away. There was too much to be afraid of, so I stopped being scared. Precisely. Kurama sneered, his simple curl at the corner of his black lips belying his malevolent tone. I'm afraid, but I can't let that stop me. Unconsciously, Naruto straightened her back and nodded to herself. I have never been a big liar. With her fists clenched at her sides, she thought, and if I don't have to, I won't do it. Ibiki's dark eyes matched Naruto's blue ones. She grinned. Curious, Ibiki tilted his head to the side. In a whisper, the blonde said, "Thank you. You helped me realize something that should have been obvious." It was nothing, the white-haired boy said with a simple shrug. Naruto nearly ran out of things to do with herself because she was so appreciative of the quiet boy. Without Ibiki forcing me to face the truth, how long would I have continued to dance around my feelings? The boy sitting on the dusty crate in the alleyway was approached by the little blonde. Before she even realized what she was doing, she was expressing her gratitude in the most genuine and intimate way she could think of, which brought back memories of Tsunade. Chan's initial recognition of her former self. In stark contrast to his customary lack of expression, Ibiki's eyes widened more than anyone could have imagined and his cheeks turned blood red. Unfortunately, as she leaned down to the sitting boy and pressed her masked lips to Ibiki's forehead, the only person in the room who could have witnessed such a momentous occasion had her own eyes fluttered shut. Ibiki, I'm serious. Thank you. This is all I have to offer. Soon after, Naruto broke free without turning around and strode in the direction of the light, away from the dim alley, and away from all the doubt and anxiety she had let out into the air. Geez, how did I turn into such a girl? Ignorantly, the blonde thought. Sasuke. Teme is probably giggling at me. No matter where he is. Even his obnoxious smirk is missed. Once more, she found herself reflecting on her past knowledge. Ero Sennin had changed. Sakura, Chan, Kakashi, Sensei, and Sasuke. Everyone. In a way, they were all gone. She had to come to terms with that, lay their memories to rest, and appreciate them and what they stood for without letting them get in the way. The blonde threw a two-fingered wave over her shoulder, and Ibiki's enormous eyes followed her the entire way, gaping. Naruto called, "You know Ibiki, you're all right with me." A sudden gust of wind blew away her words, but they still made it to Ibiki's ears before she vanished around a corner. I think we'll be great friends from here on out. I have new bonds now, she told herself, and they are sufficient. Ibiki opened my eyes to reality. I have no doubt that one day he will be fantastic. Greater even than I recall. Ibiki, red-faced, blinked out of his stunned trance upon discovering that his unexpected guest had left. His mouth slightly tightened at the corners. Friends, huh? He began. Finally something that girl said makes sense. Jiraiya of the Sannin was standing in training ground 5. Looking up at him with a mulish set to her shoulders, the tall man studied his latest apprentice with skepticism. But not in a combative manner. It seemed more like she was resisting her own internal conflicts. Another part of her was hesitant, but she was determined to do whatever she had wanted to. When the blonde teen was determined to follow through on something, Jiraiya was silently impressed by her determination and surprised by how much her eyes resembled Minato's. Naruto's posture occasionally bore uncanny similarities to that of the Sannin's former pupil. The 7-year-old said, "All right, I'm going to show you the truth of some of what I'm capable of. But I don't want you to ask me why I can do it, and I don't want you to call me a genius for it." Jiraiya raised a fair brow and drawled, "Okay, I'm not sure what kind of reaction you were expecting me to have, even though I can tell it took you ages to gather up the courage for that little speech, but I honestly don't know what to say." As Naruto simply blinked up at him, the toad sage snorted and messed up his ponytail with a hand. He liked to act like the Sannin was more dense than he actually was. He was aware that the little blonde was bothered by something and trusted him, but she was reluctant to act on that trust because she thought he didn't trust her. To be honest, Jiraiya was unable to claim that he did. How could he trust Naruto when he didn't know her well? She was honest, but the child kept so much from him that he was unsure of their relationship's current state. She had indeed become his pupil, and although they argued and joked, it wasn't as sincere as it ought to have been. The sage had the impression that he was attempting to greet someone behind a glass wall, shake hands, and introduce himself. They gave him a warm greeting and a smile behind the glass, but they did not shake his hand. They clearly wanted to be closer to him, but they wouldn't let themselves. Perhaps someone she was meant to trust in the past has harmed her? He pondered. Yes, I'm pretty sure that's true. Sometimes her eyes are too soulful. She has undoubtedly been deceived in the past. However, that isn't it. Something else is involved. She doesn't really want to, but something about me makes her retreat. Studying the silent blonde a few feet away, the toad sage sighed and raked a hand through his spiky bangs. Damn brat, he lamented. If you don't give me any reason to be suspicious of you, then I suppose it's my responsibility to demonstrate that everything will work out in the end. I will have to prove to you that you are capable of keeping your word. And one day, just like Minato, you will be a student of mine that I completely trust. Let's just continue on as we have been, and I'm sure things will be fine, nay? Jiraiya replied. Naruto didn't need to coerce herself into showing bravery. The Sennin could tell the blonde wasn't a bad kid, so things would sort themselves out. He saw it in the eyes of his own sensei. Naruto was the object of Sarutobi, sensei's hopeless affection. He recognized something about her that Jiraiya, to be honest, wished he could see for himself. Hiruzen was concerned about her own well-being. He hoped she would survive the conflict. The Sennin knew that the third wanted the girl to develop into a strong adult under his tutelage, even though he never explained why he appointed Jiraiya as her sensei. He wished for her to live a full life and develop into a formidable shinobi. Jiraiya could handle it even if he was a little uneasy about the obvious favoritism, even if it was only apparent to him. He refused to let Naruto become as deranged as Orochimaru. Jiraiya had no blindness. He could see that his former teammate's path was becoming unsightly. The Sennin was adamant about Naruto's eyes maintaining their gleaming, enchanted appearance, just like Minato's. This child is unique. He snorted to himself. Well, I'll stay alert if I have a good puzzle. Over time, even if you don't tell me, I'll come to my own conclusions. Though, looking at you now, I can see you want to tell me something more than you're trying to let on. Naruto, who had been rendered speechless for a moment, snorted and said, whatever you old perv. We'll keep getting along just fine. I'll just stop blowing you up every other minute, and if you figure something out along the way, well, I guess I may have some explaining to do. Jiraiya smiled. That suits me just fine, kid. The man ruffled her hair lovingly, and Naruto huffed. When Jiraiya suddenly started spluttering in realization, the blonde turned to go, a smile tugging at her lips. Wait, he silently said. Wait a minute, did you just admit to purposely blowing me up, you little turd? Over her shoulder, Naruto glanced warmly, the corners crinkling with joy as the sunset caught her blue eyes and ignited them. What of it? I'm gonna hang you up by your toes, you brat. When someone farted, Naruto took that as permission to run and act like Kiba. Yes, I believe that we will be all right, somewhere in a forest. A cloaked figure, battered and splattered in another person's life fluid, moved calmly through the trees. Hanzo the salamander was the owner of the blood that soaked them. A spear stood in front of the gloomy, rain-soaked village that lay beyond the forest the figure passed through. Hanzo's head was on top of the spear, having been taken off by the cloaked figure that fled in silence. It was only a matter of time until everyone found out that Aim's leader had been defeated. After a day-long battle with the warmonger, the cloaked figure paused and let out a small sigh. A pair of eyes that matched the color that was spread out overhead were remembered as sorrowful eyes fled skyward. The figure reached up and slipped their hand under their cloak, running a gentle thumb over the ragged Hite.8 stitched over the center of their tunic. Naruto's Hite.8. Once more, the figure's eyes swept low as thoughts drifted back to Hanzo's passing and how their meddling would change the world. The figure reasoned, it's for the best. I'm making the world a better place. A world that would have appealed to Naruto, a calm one. With those ideas guiding their feelings and behavior, the figure started over and embarked on a new hunt. And the cloaked figure's work would remain unfinished until everyone who was accountable for the almost hopeless future the figure came from was killed. Even though the loneliness was almost intolerable, they knew it would be worthwhile in the end, due to. Someday we'll meet again, Naruto. Sato Konohagakure. What a genius this kid is. 2 weeks had passed since Naruto had promised the Gamma Sennin that she would take training seriously and demonstrate her true abilities. He had taught her calligraphy, the foundational art required to create beautifully designed seals. Although Naruto's kanji tended to look like drunken chicken scratch, she did have a surprisingly skilled and elegant hand when needed. However, that was not the reason for Jiraiya's silent stupor. It wasn't that she had completed the fundamentals of sealing in just 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Minato had taken 2 days less, and Jiraiya a month. At this point, Naruto was prepared for the second sealing arts phase. She tested her ability to accurately replicate seals that had already been made. She had already done some of that, of course. He'd scribbled out and blown him to Kingdom Come when he made her try to recreate a basic barrier seal. It was only a basic test. You could not develop your own seals if you were unable to duplicate the ones you observed. How the brat had blown up the training grounds was still a mystery to Jiraiya, but that was a topic for another day. I'm not a genius arrow Senin. Had he really said that aloud? I'm sorry. The man threw up his hands and sighed, if not genius, then what the hell are you? A wizard? First, again, not a genius. That's what, and second, I'd be a witch. Third, stop looking at me like that. The man's face remained glum and expressionless. Naruto, I know genius when I see it. What is your issue with me calling you on it? She deadpanned, apparently you don't, because you're not seeing it. According to Jiraiya, you're really working my nerves, kid. You're too good to be an amateur shinobi and too young to have worked for all your skill. Which makes it in fact, not skill and raw talent. I'm also sure this is stuff you've never seen, so you've got to be a genius to do it so well. You catch on way too fast to be average Naruto. However, I'm not average. I'm not up to par, at least. Yes, I was. I put a lot of effort into building up the strength I needed to fight in the Fourth War, and even then, I couldn't have done anything without my allies. I also received some of the old sage's power, so there's that. Naruto whispered, just don't call me that, okay? Can you just, not? I'd really appreciate it. Jiraiya gave her a sharp look, but he remained silent for a while. He put his hands on his hips and gave in, saying, all right kid. That's fine I guess. Now, what do you say we get you some more practice before calling it a day? I'm down. She had to agree, so it went. Naruto wasted no time booking it out of the training grounds after the Toad Sannin shooed the little blonde away after their training session. Jiraiya miraculously complied with her request and ceased remarking on her genius, but Naruto could tell by his appearance. When he thought she was fully focused on her work, she noticed the musing set of his brows and the studying glances. Indeed, as Jiraiya mentioned, she had adapted to Fuinjutsu quite well, but only because Naruto had successfully acquired the capacity to understand all universal things, through the gift she received from the Sage of Six Paths. The little blonde wanted to hold back because she didn't like the shrewd looks Jiraiya was giving her, but Kurama had already made it very evident why it was foolish for her to limit her own development and dumb herself down. Although Naruto was aware that she was running out of time and that the world wouldn't improve on its own, she wished there was a way to complete her self-appointed mission without drawing attention to herself. Knowing that she was thinking in circles once more, Naruto shook her head and silently cursed Kurama for feigning not to hear her outbursts and failing to offer her some much-needed guidance. The beast complained and settled down to relax in her consciousness. Not my problem. You're the worst, Naruto said, rolling her eyes. I know, the fox sniffed arrogantly, it's probably my best quality. You're a turd, she said in a deadpan tone. Kurama sneered in the most dignified manner possible. You've been hanging out with those snotty brats far too much. Naruto made the decision not to respond in a dignified manner. She was going to be the grown-up one and not contribute to the argument for once. Kurama merely gave her a patronizing snort for this. Having begun training at dawn, the little masked blonde was not opposed to simply taking in the sights as she navigated Konoha's afternoon streets, ignoring the all-powerful Biju. She graciously returned the cheery greetings from a few vendors who recognized her and waved. Even though the disdain she had experienced had significantly decreased following Pain's attack on her in her early days, it was still strange to be treated with such warmth. Sometimes, though, it was good to just be. Since she had a lot of things to do if she wanted to change the course of history, Naruto knew it wouldn't last long. She reminded herself, that's why I need to absorb as much as possible during training. So why am I still feeling so torn about going all out? Knowing why she had to do something but still feeling like she wanted to do something else was really annoying. Naruto never liked being compared to something like that, and it made her feel like a child and selfish person. Hey! Shortly after being embraced from behind, Naruto was startled out of her reverie by the joyful call. Although she was able to remain upright after stumbling around for a few seconds. This only made the person cling to her back like a koala, lovingly cuddling her right masked one from behind with their cheek. What's up, Naruto? Obito asked once more, his upbeat voice near her ear. As her friend clung to her back, the little blonde moved her head while keeping her cheek against his. She laughed a little, and her chest grew warm with fondness. Naruto remarked, "Get off of me, you weirdo. What the heck are you doing?" Releasing himself from the marginally smaller child, Obito smiled at her while rubbing the back of his head and squinting his eyes. At times, Naruto was genuinely amazed at their similarities. The young Uchiha sheepishly explained, "I was looking for you, so I got excited when I spotted you. Sorry about that." Naruto looked at him and waved it off, her blue eyes sparkling. "'S fine. What were you looking for me for?" "Ah." Obito pointed at her, his eyes brightening. "Right, well, some of my clansmen are being huge butts again, so can I spend the night at your house? I would ask Anko, but she's a huge butt. Nugget too, and also lives at the orphanage, and who the heck would sleep in the same house as Guy and his dad? They'd probably have me doing burpees in my sleep." The word, vomit, that her friend just uttered caused Naruto to snort violently with laughter. Obito's dark eyes gleamed as he delighted in making people smile. Naruto's somewhat gloomy and melancholy mood was suddenly lifted. She was reminded of the reasons behind her actions. To be a part of this, to protect this. To be aware that others might also possess it. For the time being, the little blonde thought resolutely, "I'll stop worrying." Pulling Obito closer, Naruto wrapped her arm around his shoulder. She shook her head slightly and said, "I'm sorry some of your clansmen are butts. But yeah, I'd be happy if you came over. And I don't think Sake-chan would mind at all. Kashi might be a little salty, but we both know." Obito concluded gravely, that he's an even bigger butt than Anko? The wry response from Naruto was, "Now I wouldn't go that far." Obito burst out laughing. His tone conveyed how awesome he thought that was. "She would be so mad if she heard you say that." Naruto waved away, starting to move once more and guiding her friend in the direction of the Hitaki compound. She knows we love her." "Speak for yourself, yuck." Obito spit out the words, his face twisted in a faking disgust. Naruto gave a loving eye roll. Although Obito and Anko were constantly at each other's throats, they were as close as the other members of their small gang. They had a slightly different dynamic. To be honest, it made Naruto think of Sakura, Chan and Ino. Friends who, despite knowing they wouldn't sacrifice the other for anything, played up the bitter rival role just for the sake of doing so. There was a wistful, nostalgic gleam in Naruto's blue eyes. They were missed. "Naruto? The blonde hummed, jerking herself out of her reverie. "You okay?" Obito inquired anxiously. She gave him a gentle smile and said, "Yeah, I'm okay buddy." To her surprise, the young boy shrugged from beneath her arm, but when he took her hand in his instead, his own small, reassuring hand, her blue eyes widened visibly. Naruto simply shrugged, his ears slightly flushed, indicating that his bewilderment must have been almost tangible. Obito sighed, Don't you go calling me a princess too, Naruto. You just looked like you needed it." "What, a helping hand?" With a smile spreading across her masked face, Naruto pondered. Yes, she kind of guessed that she did. An hour later, Naruto was sitting on her favorite rock by the Hitaki Koi pond with Obito by her side. After sending a summons to the Uchihas to request permission, Tsukumo had granted him permission to spend the night. Although she was grateful, Naruto was unaware of what Tsukumo had done to get the Uchihas to simply comply with his orders. There were times when her little bud needed to escape the stuffy atmosphere of the compound. She had not yet entered it, but based on Obito's description of his clansmen, the black sheep weren't particularly liked by most of them. Naturally, she would give him the escape she had never experienced in her previous life at Obito's age. More recently, evening was gradually approaching after Naruto had assisted her friend with his taijutsu katas for some time. As it calmed, soft zephyrs whispered through Konoha and the leaves around it, bleeds of pink, orange, and sleepy blue. As they observed the koi fish below floating idly in the clear waters, the two friends enjoyed a rare moment of peaceful quiet. Obito broke the silence, albeit in a rather predictable way. He called out, "Hey Naruto?" She turned her head to meet his gaze and hummed, His midnight eyes were wide and inquisitive as he turned back to her. "You know how you do really good in school and stuff, and now you have another sensei even though we're still in the academy. And how you can help me understand taijutsu katas when Akira sensei has a hard time?" Naruto's blonde brows furrowed slightly as she replied, "Yeah?" She hadn't anticipated that. "What about it?" "Well, me, Guy, and Anko thought you would graduate early, but how come you're still in the academy?" he inquired. Whoa, could Obito have suggested that her skill level was above average at a worse moment? Obito was doing the same thing while Naruto was still mulling over how she would deal with Ero Sennin and his need to call her a genius. It dampened her mood because she had been able to gradually push her melancholy to the back of her mind while spending time with her friend, even though Naruto knew logically that he hadn't done it on purpose. Without even revealing her innermost thoughts, Naruto stated, "I'm still there cause I'm not ready to be a ninja yet." Obito squinted at her inquisitively. You keep up with Kakashi. How are you not ready to be a ninja?" he inquired. Her intention was to say, "It's not that simple. Wanting to cut the conversation short, Naruto baited, trying to give me the boot? I'm hurt. Obito sneered, yeah right. You're so phony Naruto. I just wanna know, you're super cool. How come Kakashi gets to be a ninja and you're just not? Realizing she couldn't avoid the topic without coming across as a jerk, Naruto let out a sigh. The blonde turned away from him, pulled her knees up to her chest, and wrapped her arms around them to conceal the majority of her face behind them. I just want to be normal for as long as I can Obi. I'm not a genius like Kashi. I'm just me, and I'm not ready to be a ninja yet. Naruto thought, I'm not strong enough to be sent out there and do what I've set out to do yet. Furthermore, even though I am aware that it is self-serving, I want to spend a little more time as a child before returning to combat. With obvious bewilderment in his voice, the Uchiha remarked, but you are a genius Naruto. Yeah, you can be silly, and you play jokes and Kakashi doesn't, but you're not the same as me, or Anko, or Guy. You're a genius. She whispered, no I'm not Obito. I'm really not, and I need you to understand that I never want you to think that, or call me that. Obito furrowed his brows at her and said, Naruto. The blonde had to remind herself that Obito was only a child. Not quite 6 years old, but still. Naruto continued, it's like when someone calls you a crybaby. You have your reasons for hating it, and you don't deserve to be called that, because it isn't true. Obito whispered, Naru, you're talking like being called a genius is bad. I don't think it's the same as when people call me a crybaby ninja. It is insulting in a sense, but for the most part, it's a lie. With an uncharacteristically grim masked face, the blonde told him bluntly, I don't like it. It's like saying I don't have to try to do something right, you know? It kinda just makes the things I do seem like I don't have to work for them. Naruto thought, and I hate that because I did have to work for my power. I put a lot of effort into strengthening myself, and now, just as my former self does not exist in this present, neither do my achievements, and it's awful. Obito reached out and took her bare hand for the second time that day, saying, Naru, I really don't get it. But, if you don't like it, I won't ever call you it. And I'll tell everyone else not to too. A tiny lift of Naruto's pursed lips indicated gratitude. The woman said, thanks Obito. The small Uchiha gave a slight shrug. No biggie. From the back porch, Kakashi called in a dull voice, Shorty, loser, it's time for dinner. Just after the Uzumaki and Uchiha had finished their conversation, the little blonde remarked that his timing was just too perfect. Was he paying attention? She pondered. Obito shook his free fist at the other boy as Naruto cast a suspicious, stink-eyed glance over her shoulder at the other 6-year-old wearing a mask. With a muttered sneer, the silver-haired Chunin vanished back through the rear entrance of the compound. The blonde made the decision, I'll ask him about what he heard later. When he gave her a light squeeze on the hand, Naruto's focus returned to her friend for the moment. She said, what is it buddy? With his wide dark eyes examining her in the evening light, Obito shook his head. I really don't get you sometimes Naruto. He replied. I just don't. She gently squeezed his hand back and said, I know. But that's okay. Someday you might. Obito sulked. But I want to now. Having a playful gleam in her eyes, Naruto said, don't be a baby. The Uchiha sulked even more. To be honest, Naruto felt somewhat better.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.